Hello, everyone. My name is Arvind, and today I'm going to explain you about the FHIR resources, how, what are the FHIR resources, and how we can read any FHIR resource. And apart from that, we also covering what are the flags present in the FHIR resources. And so let's go ahead and discuss all about that. So let me share my screen so that you guys can understand what I'm trying to explain. So let me share my screen. Okay. So FHIR is in my last video, if you all if you have gone through that, I majorly talked about what is FHIR, what are the feature FHIR provided. Now I'll be explaining what are the resource. So they are close to 145 resources provided by FHIR, and all are important resources, and these resources are divided into multiple categories like foundation, base resources, clinical resources, financial resources, and specialized resources. Now, the major thing about these resources, as per the certification perspective, at least you need to go through with all these resources once, and you don't need to mug up all the resources, but at least you should know the meaning of the resource. For example, why this capability statement resource significance is. What are the significance of capability statement resource? What are the significance of structure definition resources? Or if you wanted to know, you don't need to double click and go to that resource. You just put the cursor, you'll get the definition of that resource. For example, here you can see that a capability statement is a set of capability of a FHIR server for particular version of FHIR that may be used as a statement of actual server or functionality, or a statement of desired server implementation. So you can read through the definition, and then you can easily understood what is the significance of that resource. And there are close to 145 resource provided by FHIR, and you would see after each resource, either there would be a number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you would see uh, n is associated. So what does it mean? This all talk about the maturity level of the resource, or maturity level of the FHIR resource. So let's click on any one of them. Then you would see there are 5 maturity level of any resource. So for example, in the 0, if it is a 0, and then that means the resource has been published on the current build, but the label is synonymous with draft. So 0, that means a draft. 1 means it is produced but is in the build process, or there is still approval, some part of resources that got approved but is not ready, is not tested or successfully implemented, kind of thing. In the second, what it says, the artifact has been tested and successfully support the interoperability among at least 3 independently developed system and leveraging most of the scope. For example, 80% of the core data elements. We'll talk about the core data element in the later session, but just understand that it is something that has been tested and successfully support interoperability. 3 is another next level, you would say, where some management group provided a guideline, and balloting has been done. 10 distinct implementer commented in the record tracker, and at least 3 organizations resulting at least one substantive change. And then 4 is another level, one level up again, has been tested across all scope. 5 is something that is published in 2 formal publication. And then after this, normative is coming. Normative is something that the artifact is now stable. So this is what it's saying, that all 1, 2, 3 present in the resource is saying about the maturity level of the resource. Now we also need to understand, suppose one resource maturity level is 2. So in the next version of the FHIR, it became 3. No, it's not like that. It's totally depend on the mm, uh, it's totally depend on the resource. So maybe if any resource maturity level is 2, it can go down as well to 1, or it can go up to 5, or it can go up to normative. So resource maturity level can move to any level. So it's not like it's go always, or it is always gonna increase, but it's also gonna decrease, and it can go uh, uh, to 0, 1 if it is 3 or 2. If it is, it can also go to 4, 5, and it became normative as well in the next version. And what what is basically a standard development process of any resource or development, so there are a couple of implementation readiness is mentioned in the specification. As we said, one of them is the draft, trial use, normative, informative, depreciated. Normative, we already talked about that. If it is any resource is normative, that means this content has been subject to review and production implementation in a wide variety of environment, and the content is considered to be stable and has been logged and subjected to inter-version compatibility rule. While changes are possible, it's not like changes are not possible, but they are expected to be very infrequent and are tightly constrained. But there are other description also. There are stage of in sources. They are depreciated, informative. Something is very informative. Trial use. Something is for trial use in the production environment. Something is not considered to be safe for implementation. That we call as draft. Okay, so yeah, this is called a maturity level of any resource. So now let's go to one resource and talk about how you read any resource. This is something very important with respect to certification as well, because there are a couple of pointer we're gonna discuss. So this is basically a structure of any resource where you see that patient and all the data element of all of the patient. So this is the name of the name of the resource, and all the data element present of the patient resource is mentioned here. Now the second column talk about the flag. We'll talk in detail what is flag. Third column is basically talking about the cardinality, whether this is a repeat, or if this is optional field. So this is something that we're gonna discuss. uh, the fourth one is basically type. Type is the data type. So each data element should have a data type, and this is how it represent according to the data type. And then another column is talking about the description and constraint. What does it mean? Is basically a summary that what basically this data element is all about, and what would be the possible value, where any binding is associated with that field or not. And if it is any binding would be there, then they're gonna explain it over here. Like for marital status, there's a binding called extensible, and there's a binding in the gender that which is required. So it's all, yeah, we're gonna discuss all about. So let's talk about first the name. So always remember, in the FHIR, name and data element names are case sensitive. You cannot play around with it. So it's always a case sensitive. And then these are the elements that FHIR has provided that these are the data element would be part of the or could be part of any patient resource. So you would see that there's a different this there's a different everything about the patient. There's a different thing mentioned about the patient resource. Every information of the patient resource is explained here in this page. Now the second column is the flag. So there are multiple flags are present in the FHIR. One of them is the summary flag. This sigma sign is called a summary flag. Summary means there's a core data element of the patient. So suppose you saying that identifier is a part of the summary set, that means or is summary equal to true, underscore summary equal to true means this identifier is a part of the core data element. So in the FHIR there are few value which FHIR has defined the part of the core element. So that is basically the summary set. Now the second is the flag is normative. So we already talked about what is normative. That means that stable and changes are very infrequent and is tightly covered or a stable resource kind of thing. So majorly it is this flag is part of the resource, but in this few resource is part of the data element. This normative and trial use and all is part of the data element as well. For example, if you can go to capability statement, there you would find few flag is a part of normative, trial use, few data element is part of that. And sigma, I already told you that this means if sigma is there, that means this data field or data element is a part of the core element of that resource. Now second is basically the modifier element. Modifier element, that means it can change the interpretation of the resource. If suppose this is something is a modifying property associated or modifying property, that means you cannot ignore this field because it can change the interpretation of the data field. For example, I can give you an example of an allergy resource. Let's go to allergy resource. Very nicely explained. Allergy intolerance. So in the allergy intolerance, you would see there's a stage called there's a data field called verification status, and it has a modifying property associated with it. Suppose if a patient is allergic to penicillin, and let's talk about a real-time example. If any patient is allergic to penicillin, and if it is confirmed, the status is confirmed, that means okay, this patient is confirmed and allergic to penicillin. If suppose is unconfirmed, verification is unconfirmed, then there would be some other test provider needs to do or physician need to do, a GP needs to do, general physician needs to do. So that means you cannot ignore that data element. So there's a modifying property associated with it. So suppose it would be confirmed or unconfirmed, then the interpretation would be different. And suppose it entered in error, that means everything whatever they entered is entered in error. If they're saying that is the allergy to penicillin or paracetamol, or any content, that means entered in error. That means the verification status would be entered in error. So the interpretation would be changed. So that's what it is. The element having a modifying property associated with it. Now there is another flag apart from the summary set and is modifier. It's called as invariant, is also sometimes also called constraint. So that means that you can is affected by some variant or some constraint. Now if you wanted to know more detail about this, you can go down and you can see this rule and patient.contact. So what is a constraint? What is defined here? Shall at least contain contact detail or reference to an organization. So this is explained here. So every resource which part of the constraint or invariant is also called invariant would refer you can go to the constraint and see what is the rule associated with that data element. So yeah, this is all the flag of any resource data element. And then the next is cardinality, whether this field is data element is repeat, not repeat, is mandatory, all would be explained with this notation. 0 dot dot asterisk. Asterisk means it go to infinite, 0 means is an optional. And then next would be the type, is data type. What data type is associated with this all data element. You don't need to mug up, and there would be no question in the exam about the data type, but you need to know that what is data type. You just click on any data type and see that what are the element associated with that data type, and you can read through it. So, and then the description constraint, I already told you that what is the description of that field is explained in this resource. So this is all about the resource, that how you can read through it. I hope you like this session. Thank you.